I want to tell you about the night I learned exactly how invisible some people think you are until you stop playing along. It started as a celebration turned into a humiliation and ended with a room full of powerful people realizing they had badly misjudged the wrong person. And yeah, it happened on a plane. But if you've ever been talked over, pushed aside, or told you don't belong somewhere, you'll recognize this feeling instantly. My wife and I had just crossed 40 years together. 40 years of work compromise arguments that ended in laughter and nights where we wondered if we were doing any of it right. I wanted to do something memorable, something reckless in a quiet, grown-up way, so I booked us on a luxury international flight first-class private suite, the whole thing. When my wife saw the price, she laughed and told me I'd lost my mind. I reminded her of the years we skipped vacations, drove beat-up cars, and counted every dollar. This was our turn. Just this once. The airport experience felt unreal, like we'd wandered into someone else's life. Private lounge, calm voices, no rushing, no barking orders. For a moment, I let myself enjoy it. We boarded early, settled into our seats, and toasted with champagne that probably cost more than our first rent payment. I remember thinking this is nice, maybe too nice, but we earned it. Then the curtain flew open, not slid, not gently pulled. Yanked hard like someone was angry the space existed without their permission. A woman stepped in wearing a bright designer suit, sunglasses still on indoors, confidence radiating off her like heat. She didn't look at us, not really. She looked around the cabin and snapped her fingers. "Why are there people in my suite?" The flight attendant behind her froze. I could see the calculation happening in his eyes. He explained carefully that the seats were booked, that we were the assigned passengers. She laughed, a sharp sound with no humor in it, and said her name like it was a legal document. Said her family name. Said she always sat there. Said she was tired and needed to sleep. Then she pointed at us and said, "Get them out." Not please, not excuse me, just that. I stayed calm. I always stay calm. I told her politely that we'd paid for the seats, that we were celebrating our anniversary, that maybe there'd been a mix-up somewhere. She stared at me like she couldn't understand why a piece of furniture was speaking. Then she turned back to the flight attendant and threatened his job, his future, his entire career, all with a smile. My wife squeezed my hand. I could feel her tension. She hates scenes. She whispered, maybe we should move just to keep the peace. And that hurt more than anything the woman said, because I knew how often my wife had been the one to shrink herself so others could feel comfortable. The attendant mumbled something about her being a VIP. That word did all the talking. VIP. Suddenly, rules bent. Spines softened. I asked him to check the tickets. He hesitated. The woman stepped closer and dropped her handbag right onto my lap like it was a power move. I placed it on the floor beside me. She screamed like I'd committed a crime. Out came her phone. Recording. "I feel unsafe," she said loudly, panning the camera toward my wife's face. My wife turned away, embarrassed, hurt. I stood up then slowly and told her to stop filming us. She called me aggressive, said I was threatening her. The attendant panicked and asked to speak to me privately. In the galley, he apologized in a whisper and offered us different seats plus a voucher like he was bargaining at a flea market. Then he said it. "You people don't want trouble with security." He corrected himself fast, but the message had already landed. I told him no. We were going back to our seats. If the woman was still there, she needed to be removed. When I returned, she was sitting in my seat with her shoes off, eating the snacks meant for us. She smiled like she'd won something. Told me to grab my bags. That's when the captain arrived. He didn't ask questions. He didn't check tickets. He didn't ask for my side. He saw what he expected to see. A crying blonde VIP and a black man standing in the aisle. He told me to leave the plane or be escorted off by police. My wife was crying quietly now. I felt the weight of that moment pressing on my chest. I realized then this wasn't about comfort or inconvenience. It was about whether we were allowed to exist without being erased. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Told the captain he was making a very expensive mistake. He laughed and called security. I didn't call the police. I opened a secure app and made a call to someone who managed assets for a company I happened to have a stake in. I gave him the flight number, the aircraft registration, told him to initiate a clause. The plane went silent. Lights out. Air stopped. You don't understand how loud silence can be until you're sitting in a dark aircraft full of confused people. The captain's face went pale. He asked me what I'd done. I told him calmly I hadn't turned anything off. I'd just revoked permission to operate. The woman started screaming about terrorism, about lawsuits, about ruining my life. Then airport police boarded. The officer looked around, took in the scene, and asked who the problem was. The captain pointed at me, said I'd sabotaged the plane. I stood slowly, hands visible, and explained that the aircraft was leased by a company I had authority over. Asked the officer to check the documentation. When he did, his tone changed. This wasn't criminal, it was contractual. The phone rang. The airline's CEO. Loud, frantic, panicked. He demanded to know who'd been removed. When he heard my name, the line went quiet. Then he begged. Offered money upgrades, anything. I looked at my wife. She shook her head. She didn't want perks. She wanted respect. I told him to come down in person with the press and apologize publicly, or the plane would stay grounded. He agreed. Hours passed. The cabin grew hot. Passengers grew angry. Not at me, not at the airline, but at the woman who started it all. Her live stream comments turned vicious. People recognized what entitlement looked like when it finally met resistance. When the CEO arrived, he fired the captain on the spot, banned the woman for life, then apologized directly to my wife in front of cameras. I spoke once briefly. Said, dignity isn't something you buy, it's something you either give or take away. We didn't take that flight. We flew private later that night. Quiet, peaceful, but the story didn't end there. The airline collapsed and restructured. The woman lost her platform, her status, her safety net. Months later, I saw her again at the airport wearing a uniform arguing with a hiring manager. She blamed me for everything. I told her the truth. I didn't take anything from her. I just stopped her from taking it from others. As our plane lifted off, my wife squeezed my hand and smiled. And I thought about how power really works. It doesn't shout, it waits. And when it finally speaks, it changes the room. Now, I want to hear from you. Was what I did right, or did it go too far? Have you ever seen entitlement cross the line or been the one expected to move just to keep someone else comfortable? Drop your thoughts in the comments, argue it out respectfully, and share this story with someone who needs a reminder that respect isn't optional.